My name is Rebecca Miller, I'm 34 years old, and I swear to you, nothing could have prepared me for the storm that hit me in the weeks after my husband died. People always tell you grief makes you vulnerable, that you'll find out who really loves you and who's just circling like a vulture. I learned that lesson the hardest way possible. Just 3 weeks ago, I buried my husband, Daniel Miller. He was 38, strong, ambitious, the type of man who built his own company from the ground up. Together, we had spent 10 years married, years that weren't always perfect, but they were ours. Losing him was like losing a piece of my own body. I thought the funeral would be the lowest point of my life. I was wrong. The day after I buried him, my sister, Amanda, gave birth to her first child. Family obligations pushed me to be there, even though my heart was still shattered. I told myself it might help to see new life begin right after losing the person I loved most. Maybe it would bring me some peace. Instead, it brought me the kind of betrayal that still makes my stomach twist when I think about it. Amanda was lying in the hospital bed, pale but glowing with that strange pride new mothers carry. Our parents were there, some of her friends too. We all thought she was just about to introduce her newborn son. But no, Amanda had other plans. She stood up, or rather, forced herself upright despite the stitches, and with the baby cradled in one arm, she pulled a folded piece of paper from the bedside drawer. Then, in front of everyone, she said the words that made my blood run cold. "Everyone, this is my son. But he's not just mine. He's Daniel's. Yes, Rebecca's husband. Which means, by law, I'm entitled to half of his company. $600,000. And here," she waved the paper dramatically, "is his will to prove it." Gasps filled the room. My mother almost fainted. My father froze, face turning gray. But me? I smiled. I smiled so wide Amanda blinked in confusion. Because what she didn't know was that Daniel had been smarter than she ever imagined. And this, her little performance, was going to be the beginning of her downfall. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, calm as a summer breeze, "So what?" Inside, I was fighting not to laugh. Because Amanda had just declared war, and I was already holding all the weapons. Amanda's smug little smile that day is burned into my memory. She thought she had won. She thought she had humiliated me in front of everyone at the hospital. My parents didn't know where to look, the nurses were whispering, and Amanda's so-called friends were already sizing me up like I was about to become the poor widow stripped of everything. But Amanda had no idea that Daniel and I had seen her coming years ago. See, Amanda was always the kind of person who wanted what wasn't hers. Growing up, if I had a new dress, she'd borrow it and somehow ruin it. If I got praised for good grades, she'd sulk until she found a way to make herself the center of attention. And when Daniel and I got married, I caught her watching him with that hungry little glint in her eyes. I didn't think much of it at first, men always brushed her off, and Daniel was loyal. But I did warn him once, Amanda's the type who'll try to take what's mine. He laughed, kissed me on the forehead, and said, "Don't worry. I'll make sure she never gets the chance." Turns out, he wasn't just talking. Daniel had updated his will 2 years ago, after Amanda tried to pull a stunt involving one of his business partners. He told me straight to my face, "Rebecca, I know how ambitious she is. I've arranged things so that if anyone tries to claim something after I'm gone, they'll regret it." At the time, I didn't press for details. But sitting there in that hospital room, watching Amanda wave around that will, I realized she had no clue what she was actually holding. Daniel's lawyer had already given me the sealed, final version, and what Amanda had was just an outdated draft. So I smiled, because I knew exactly how this was going to play out. And instead of panicking like Amanda wanted, I leaned closer to her and whispered, just loud enough for the room to hear. "Careful, sis. You might regret showing that paper." The look on her face was priceless. For the first time, she looked unsure. And that was the very first crack in her little victory. Amanda never was the type to back down once she thought she had the upper hand. A few days after that little hospital scene, I got a thick envelope delivered to my house. Inside were legal papers. Amanda was officially filing a claim against Daniel's estate, demanding half of his company. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, holding that envelope, and just laughing. She hadn't even let her stitches heal before she went running to a lawyer. That told me everything I needed to know. Amanda wasn't grieving, she wasn't even thinking about her son, she was obsessed with money and control. The next day, she called me. Her voice was dripping with arrogance. "Rebecca, you should just accept this. I'll take half the company, you'll keep the other half, and we can move on. Honestly, it's better for you this way. Do you really think you can run a business by yourself?" I didn't answer her question. Instead, I asked her something simple. "Amanda, do you even know what Daniel's company does?" Silence. Then she muttered something about real estate, which was wrong. That's when I realized Amanda was about to walk into a battle she wasn't remotely prepared for. Behind the scenes, I already had Daniel's lawyer, Mr. Carter, working with me. He was an older man, sharp as a blade, and he despised people like Amanda. When I showed him the copy of the will she had waved around, he chuckled. "This isn't worth the paper it's printed on. Outdated, unsigned in the margins, and doesn't match the notarized version. If she wants to play dirty, Rebecca, we'll let her bury herself." That was when my plan for revenge truly began forming. I wasn't just going to win this case. No, I was going to make sure Amanda lost more than she ever expected. But to do that, I had to play along. So I called her back later that evening, kept my voice low, and said, "Fine. If you want to fight me for it, then let's take it to court." Amanda laughed, thinking she had cornered me. She had no idea I was already digging the hole she'd fall into. The first court hearing came quicker than I expected. Amanda showed up in a tight black dress, pushing her baby in a stroller, trying to play the role of the grieving mistress who just wanted what was fair. She looked smug as she strutted into the courtroom, while I sat calmly beside Mr. Carter, my lawyer, with Daniel's true will locked safely in his briefcase. From the very beginning, Amanda tried to paint me as the villain. Her lawyer stood and announced, "My client, Amanda Sanders, is the rightful mother of the deceased's child. As such, she is entitled to 50% of his estate, including his company, which is currently valued at $600,000. I stayed quiet. I didn't flinch. I didn't even look at her. That silence unnerved Amanda more than I expected. When it was our turn, Mr. Carter stood and spoke with a calm authority that filled the room. "Your Honor, the document Miss Sanders is presenting is not valid. It's an outdated draft that was replaced 2 years ago. We have in our possession the notarized, final version of Mr. Miller's will. It not only excludes Miss Sanders, but it also contains provisions that make her claims completely baseless." Amanda's face went red. She hadn't expected that. Her lawyer shuffled his papers nervously, clearly blindsided. But the real blow came when Mr. Carter handed the judge a sealed envelope and said, "We would like this admitted as evidence. It will make clear Mr. Miller's true intentions." Amanda's eyes darted toward me, and for the first time, I saw fear flicker behind her anger. The judge scheduled a full review of the will for the following month. That gave me time to tighten the noose. Because while Amanda was busy throwing tantrums and making threats, I was working with a private investigator Daniel had trusted. And the information we were digging up was going to do more than just save my husband's company. It was going to destroy Amanda's credibility, her finances, and even her so-called perfect image as a new mother. The war had just begun. The private investigator's name was Tom Hensley, a quiet man in his 50s who had worked with Daniel for years. Daniel used him for background checks on potential business partners, but Tom also knew about Amanda. In fact, he had warned Daniel years ago to watch his back around her. When I met Tom at a little diner on the edge of town, he slid a thick folder across the table to me. "I think you'll find this useful," he said, sipping his coffee like this was just another day at the office. Inside that folder was everything I needed. Bank statements showing Amanda was drowning in debt. Credit cards maxed out. Payday loans she hadn't paid back. She was basically living off handouts from our parents and whatever money she could get out of men. That perfect housewife image she tried to project was nothing but smoke and mirrors. But that wasn't even the worst part. Tom had also tracked down text messages between Amanda and Daniel, or rather, her one-sided attempts at seducing him. She had been relentless, sending late-night messages, showing up uninvited at his office, even hinting at blackmail. Daniel never responded inappropriately. In fact, his last message to her was crystal clear. Amanda, this needs to stop. I love my wife. If you ever try to interfere with my family again, I'll make sure you regret it. I felt my throat tighten as I read those words. Daniel had known. He had protected me, even when he didn't tell me the full truth. The final piece of the puzzle was almost too good to be true, a paternity test. Daniel had secretly ordered one after Amanda hinted years ago that she might be carrying his child. The results were in the folder. And guess what? The baby Amanda was waving around as her golden ticket. Not Daniel's. I sat there in the diner, folder spread out in front of me, my hands shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. This wasn't just a defense anymore. This was ammunition. And I was going to use every single piece of it to bring Amanda down. Revenge isn't just about the courtroom. Sometimes it's about planting little seeds, letting them grow until your enemy crumbles under the weight of their own lies. And that's exactly what I set out to do with Amanda. The first seed I planted was at my parents' house. They had been caught in the middle, torn between their two daughters. At first, they didn't know what to believe. Amanda had always been manipulative, but the way she waved that will around had shaken them. So one Sunday afternoon, I invited them over for coffee. Without saying too much, I slid one of Tom's documents across the table. It was Amanda's bank statement, pages of overdraft fees, payday loans, and credit card bills. My mother gasped, my father clenched his jaw. I'm not saying anything, I told them calmly, but do you really think someone drowning in this kind of debt cares about family? Or do you think she's just after the money? That was enough. I could see the shift in their eyes. The blind loyalty was gone. The second seed was with her so-called friends. Amanda loved to gossip, so I knew exactly how to get to them. I let a rumor slip that Amanda's baby might not even be Daniel's. I didn't say it outright, of course. All it took was one conversation at the grocery store with a neighbor who couldn't keep a secret if her life depended on it. By the end of the week, half the town was buzzing. The third seed was subtle but effective. I asked Mr. Carter to quietly let Amanda's lawyer know we had proof that could destroy her credibility if she pushed too hard. We didn't reveal what it was, but just the suggestion rattled him enough that he started pressuring Amanda to settle. Amanda, of course, refused. She doubled down, puffing herself up like she was untouchable. But what she didn't realize was that her own arrogance was isolating her. Her friends stopped visiting. My parents stopped defending her. And everywhere she went, people whispered. By the time the next court date rolled around, Amanda wasn't walking in with confidence anymore. She was walking in with desperation. And that was exactly where I wanted her. The second court hearing felt different from the moment I walked in. The first time, Amanda had floated in with that smug grin, parading her baby around like a trophy. This time, she looked tired. Her hair wasn't perfectly styled, her dress wasn't as polished, and her lawyer kept whispering frantically to her like he was trying to keep her from exploding. Mr. Carter and I sat calmly at our table. He had that quiet confidence about him, the kind that makes everyone in the room wonder what you're holding back. The judge began by reviewing the evidence both sides had presented. Amanda's lawyer started with the same tired arguments, that she had Daniel's child, that she had a copy of his will, that she was entitled to half his company. But as he spoke, I noticed the judge flipping through the documents with a frown. Finally, the judge looked up and asked Amanda's lawyer, "Do you have proof of paternity?" The room went dead silent. Amanda straightened in her chair and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Of course he's Daniel's child. Everyone knows it." Mr. Carter seized the moment. He stood, adjusted his glasses, and handed over a sealed envelope. Your Honor, my client would like to submit certified paternity test results conducted while Mr. Miller was alive. These results clearly indicate that the child in question is not biologically related to him. The courtroom gasped. I didn't even need to look at Amanda to know her face was burning. She slammed her hand on the table, shouting, "That's a lie. That's a forgery. Daniel told me, he told me it was his." The judge rapped his gavel, demanding order. Amanda's outburst had shattered the composed, grieving mother act she'd been trying to play. Her lawyer put his head in his hands. Meanwhile, I sat still, hands folded, my expression calm. Inside, though, I felt like fire was coursing through my veins. Because for the first time, Amanda was exposed. And it was only going to get worse for her from here. After that explosive hearing, Amanda's carefully crafted world began to crumble. The gossip in town intensified. People weren't just whispering about her anymore, they were outright talking. I heard from a neighbor that someone had seen her storming out of a grocery store after a cashier muttered something about not even knowing who the father is. Amanda had always lived for appearances. She needed to be admired, envied, talked about in glowing terms. Now she was the subject of ridicule, and it was eating her alive. She tried calling me late one night. Her voice was sharp, panicked. "You think you've won, Rebecca? You think you can humiliate me and just walk away? I'm not done with you. I'll drag you down with me if I have to." I didn't even let her finish before I said, calm and steady, "Amanda, you're already drowning. And I'm not the one who pushed you in. You did that yourself." Then I hung up. That phone call told me everything. She was spiraling. And that's when I set the next stage of my plan into motion. Tom, the private investigator, had also dug into Amanda's finances deeper than I expected. Not only was she in debt, but she had been secretly embezzling money from her last job, small amounts over time, but enough that her former employer had suspected something. They hadn't pressed charges then, but with Tom's evidence, it would take one phone call to open that wound again. So I made that call. Not to the police, not yet, but to her old boss. I didn't reveal myself, just hinted that Amanda was back to her old tricks and that I had proof. By the next day, Amanda was fired from her current job. No income. A mountain of debt. A baby she claimed was her golden ticket now proven not to be Daniel's. And whispers of criminal charges floating around. Amanda's confidence was gone. Now, she was cornered. And a cornered Amanda was dangerous, but also easy to destroy. Desperation makes people reckless, and Amanda was no exception. A week after losing her job, she showed up at my house uninvited. I'll never forget the look in her eyes, wild, almost unhinged. She was holding a manila envelope like it was her last weapon. She barged in before I could stop her. "You think you've ruined me, Rebecca?" she hissed. "Well, I've got something that'll ruin you too." I folded my arms and stayed calm, even though my heart was pounding. "What exactly do you think you have on me, Amanda?" She smirked, slid a few photographs out of the envelope, and tossed them onto my dining table. They were blurry shots of me at a restaurant with Tom, the private investigator. To anyone who didn't know the truth, it could look like something more than just business. "I'll tell everyone you were cheating on Daniel before he died," Amanda sneered. "Imagine how that'll look in court. The poor grieving widow exposed as a liar, a cheater. The judge won't side with you then." I couldn't help it, I laughed. The sound seemed to rattle her. "Amanda, do you even hear yourself? Those pictures prove nothing. And even if they did, do you really think anyone's going to believe you over me, after everything that's already come out?" Her smirk faltered, but she pushed harder. "If you don't back off and give me what I want, I'll make sure everyone sees these." I leaned in, my voice low and steady. "Go ahead. Show them. Because the minute you do, I'll hand over proof that you tried to blackmail me. And guess what? That's a crime. You'll go from a failed mistress to a convicted felon. Is that really the legacy you want for your son?" For the first time, Amanda was speechless. Her mouth opened, then shut again. Her hands trembled as she stuffed the pictures back into the envelope. She stormed out without another word, but I knew then, she was finished. All that was left was to let her unravel completely. And I was going to make sure everyone saw it happen. The final court hearing felt like the climax of a long, ugly play. By now, Amanda's reputation was shredded. Her friends had abandoned her, my parents barely spoke to her, and word about her debts and job loss had spread everywhere. Still, she walked into the courtroom clinging to that last shred of arrogance, like if she pretended hard enough, she could will herself into victory. But the moment the proceedings started, it was clear the judge had no patience left. He went straight to the matter of the will. Mr. Carter presented Daniel's notarized version, airtight and crystal clear. Amanda wasn't mentioned anywhere, not as a beneficiary, not as a trustee, not even as a footnote. The company, the assets, everything was left solely to me. Amanda tried to interrupt, her voice shrill. That's not fair. He promised me. He told me. The judge banged the gavel. Miss Sanders, unless you have documented, verifiable proof, your claims hold no weight in this court. That's when she snapped. She stood up, waving her arms wildly, shouting about conspiracies, accusing me of forging documents, accusing Mr. Carter of bribing officials, even accusing the judge himself of being biased against single mothers. The courtroom erupted in murmurs, bailiffs moved closer, and her lawyer tried in vain to calm her down. I sat there quietly, hands folded, watching her unravel. This wasn't just about winning anymore, it was about letting Amanda destroy herself with her own behavior. And she was doing it beautifully. The judge's final words were sharp and unforgiving. This case is dismissed. Miss Sanders, any further false claims or attempts to harass the executor of Mr. Miller's estate will result in legal consequences. Consider this your warning. Amanda collapsed back into her chair, pale and shaking. The gavel came down, and just like that, it was over. I had won. But I wasn't done. Because Amanda still had to face the consequences outside that courtroom. And I was going to make sure she couldn't escape them. After the judge dismissed her case, Amanda's fall from grace sped up like a rock rolling downhill. Court had been her big stage, her chance to prove herself, and instead she had exposed every ounce of her instability for the whole town to see. Word spread quickly. People talked about how she had screamed at the judge, how she had accused everyone of corruption, how she had looked like a woman completely out of control. The small town we lived in didn't forgive scenes like that. By the end of the week, Amanda wasn't just whispered about, she was openly ridiculed. I ran into an old family friend at the grocery store, and she shook her head with pity. Rebecca, I don't know how you've held yourself together. Your sister, well, she's ruined her own name. And she was right. Amanda had done most of the work for me. But I wasn't content with her just being embarrassed. No, I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions in a way she couldn't ignore. With Tom's help, I arranged for her former employer to quietly reopen the investigation into her embezzlement. It didn't take much convincing, her public meltdown had already made her look unreliable, and the evidence was airtight. The day she was served with papers for that investigation was the day I knew Amanda had hit rock bottom. She tried calling me again, but this time I didn't answer. I didn't need to hear her excuses, her anger, or her desperate attempts to twist the story. For the first time in months, I felt free. Free of her games, her manipulation, her poison. Daniel's company was secure, my reputation untarnished, and Amanda was finally forced to face the consequences she had been dodging her whole life. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. But Amanda wasn't done, not yet. Because when people are cornered, sometimes they strike out one last time. And I was ready for her when she did. I should have known Amanda wouldn't go down quietly. People like her never do. When the embezzlement case started closing in on her, she grew even more erratic. She had lost in court, lost her job, lost her reputation, and now she was facing potential criminal charges. For most people, that would be enough to finally stop. But Amanda? She decided if she was going to burn, she'd try to take me with her. It happened at a community fundraiser, an event Daniel and I had supported for years. I went because it felt right, like a way to honor him. The room was full of people who respected him, people who had been watching everything play out with Amanda from the sidelines. Halfway through the evening, Amanda walked in. She wasn't invited, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair a mess, but she strutted in anyway, clutching that same manila envelope like it was her lifeline. The whispers started immediately. She marched straight to the stage where the mayor was giving a speech, interrupted him, and grabbed the microphone. "Everyone needs to know the truth about Rebecca," she screeched. "She's not who you think she is. She cheated on Daniel before he died. She's been lying to all of you." Gasps filled the room. All eyes turned toward me. And that's when I stood up, calm as ever, and walked toward her. "Amanda," I said, just loud enough for the microphone to pick up, "those photographs you're holding? The ones you've been trying to use against me? I'd like you to show them to everyone. Right now." She blinked, caught off guard. Her hand trembled as she pulled the pictures out. She expected gasps, shock, maybe even disgust. Instead, people laughed. Because the photos were blurry, obviously innocent, and nothing more than me sitting across from Tom at a diner. Amanda froze, her face draining of color as the laughter spread. She had just humiliated herself in front of the entire community. I leaned closer, my voice sharp but quiet enough for only her to hear. "This was your last card, Amanda. And you played it wrong." She dropped the pictures and bolted out of the room, the sound of laughter and whispers chasing her out the door. That was the moment I knew Amanda was finished for good. After the fundraiser fiasco, Amanda didn't show her face in public for weeks. The humiliation had been too much. But hiding couldn't protect her from what was coming. The embezzlement investigation moved quickly. With Tom's files and her old employer finally stepping forward, the case against her was solid. She had skimmed thousands of dollars over the course of 2 years, and now there was no way to explain it away. The district attorney's office pressed charges. When the news broke, it wasn't whispers this time, it was headlines. "Local woman charged with embezzlement," the papers read. Everyone knew exactly who it was. I'll admit, when I saw her mugshot on the county sheriff's website, I felt a rush of satisfaction. Not because I enjoyed seeing my sister fall, but because she had spent her whole life manipulating people, and finally, she had to face consequences she couldn't escape. Meanwhile, I was free to focus on rebuilding my life. Daniel's company was officially mine, and though I wasn't a businesswoman by nature, I knew I couldn't let his legacy fall apart. With Mr. Carter's guidance and Daniel's trusted employees, I started stepping into a leadership role. To my surprise, I found I was stronger than I'd given myself credit for. My parents, too, began to see me differently. Where once they had tried to stay neutral between Amanda and me, now they stood firmly by my side. My father told me one evening, "Rebecca, your strength through all of this, it's what Daniel would have wanted. You've honored him." Amanda, on the other hand, was out on bail, isolated and angry. She tried calling me once more, leaving a voicemail full of venom and blame. I didn't bother responding. She wasn't my problem anymore, the law was handling her now. And as much as I wanted to put her behind me, I had a feeling Amanda wasn't done trying to lash out. People like her never truly stop until they're forced to. And soon, she would be forced to. Amanda's trial was scheduled for early spring. By then, the town had already made up its mind about her. She was no longer Amanda the new mother or Amanda the pretty sister. She was Amanda the thief, Amanda the liar, Amanda who tried to steal her brother-in-law's company. The courtroom was packed on the first day, not with supporters but with curious faces eager to watch her fall. I sat quietly near the back, not because I needed to be there, the case had nothing to do with me anymore, but because I wanted closure. The prosecution laid out the evidence in painstaking detail, the false invoices, the bank transfers into Amanda's personal account, the forged signatures. Then they called witnesses, her old co-workers, her supervisor. Each one testified how Amanda had always seemed entitled, always cutting corners, always looking for ways to take advantage. Her defense tried to spin it, of course. They painted her as a struggling single mother who had made mistakes, but didn't deserve to be punished so harshly. Amanda even took the stand, tears running down her face as she sobbed about how everything I did was for my son. But it was too late. The lies couldn't hide the paper trail. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, Amanda's wail echoed through the courtroom. She collapsed in her chair, clutching her head, while the judge announced her sentence, 18 months in state prison, with restitution payments due after her release. I sat there, hands folded in my lap, feeling an unexpected wave of peace wash over me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel Amanda's shadow looming over my life. She was finally, truly, stopped. Walking out of that courtroom, I breathed in the crisp spring air and felt lighter than I had since Daniel's passing. Amanda's choices had caught up to her, and she could no longer hurt me, or anyone else. I was free. But there was still one more step left before I could fully close this chapter, reclaiming my life, my happiness, and Daniel's legacy. With Amanda finally out of my life, I could breathe again. For months, my world had revolved around her chaos, her lies, her schemes, her endless attempts to destroy me. Now, with her behind bars, I was free to focus on what truly mattered, rebuilding my life, and honoring Daniel. Running Daniel's company wasn't easy, but it gave me purpose. At first, I felt like an imposter sitting in his chair, making decisions he would have made effortlessly. But over time, I realized I wasn't alone. His employees respected me, not just because I was his widow, but because I was willing to listen, to learn, and to protect what he had built. Slowly, the business began to grow again. Every milestone felt like a tribute to him. My parents grew closer to me, too. Without Amanda poisoning the family dynamic, we found peace in simple dinners together, in long conversations about Daniel, in shared silence that didn't feel heavy anymore. For the first time in years, I felt like their daughter again, not the sister constantly battling for space against Amanda's demands. There were still moments of grief, of course. Nights when I lay awake, missing Daniel so deeply it hurt to breathe. But instead of drowning in it, I learned to live with it. To let his memory guide me instead of haunt me. One evening, after finalizing a deal that would secure the company's future for years to come, I stood in Daniel's old office, looking at his photograph on the wall. I whispered, "We did it, love. She's gone. And you're still here, through me, through this." And for the first time since he passed, I smiled without forcing it. Amanda had tried to take everything from me, my marriage, my future, even my dignity. But in the end, all she did was destroy herself. I came out stronger. I came out free. And I knew Daniel would have been proud. This was my closure. My revenge. My peace. The chapter with Amanda was closed forever.